Centenary of the Mother's return to Sri Aurobindo. Today, the 24th of April 2020, we are celebrating the centenary of the Mother's final arrival in Pondicherry. We give a brief account of the Mother's early life, a journey that led to her meeting with Sri Aurobindo. Let us see what that means for us and for the world. Let us offer our gratitude to them for all they have done. The Mother was born on the 21st of February 1878 at 41 Boulevard Haussmann in Paris. She was named Blanche Rachel Mira Alfassa. Her parents had emigrated to France a few months before her birth. Neither of them were religious. Her father, a banker, was a practical, easygoing man who loved taking his children to museums and gardens and the circus. Her mother was an intense, serious, strong-willed woman who believed that the goal of life was to make constant progress and strive for perfection. She wanted her children to become the best in the world. About her, our mother once said,
"When, as a child, I used to complain to my mother about food or any such small matter, she would always tell me to go and do my work or pursue my studies instead of bothering about trifles. She would ask me if I was born for comfort. You are born to realize the highest ideals, she would say, and send me packing. She was quite right, though of course her notion of the highest ideal was rather poor by our standards."
Mother received her early education at home. Her mother was wise enough never to force her to do anything. She learned to read only at the age of 7. When she was 8, she learned to play tennis and began to draw. At the age of 9, she went to school for the first time, a small private school for young women. At 9, she also started to play the piano. Mother's outer life was like that of any other child, but she also had an intense inner life that no one knew about, not even her parents. This conscious inner life began when she was 5 years old. In her room, she had a small cushioned armchair, and whenever she was troubled or just wanted to be quiet, she would sit in her little armchair. As she once explained,
"My first experience was of the consciousness here,
Mother makes a gesture above the head,
which I felt like a light and a force, and I felt it here
Mother shows a place above the head.
at the age of 5. It was a very pleasant sensation. I would sit in a little armchair made especially for me, all alone in my room. And I had a very pleasant feeling of something very strong, very luminous. And it was here,
Above the head.
consciousness. And I felt, that's what I have to live, what I have to be. Not with all those words, naturally, but
Mother makes a gesture of aspiration upward.
then I would pull it down, for it was truly my reason for living.
Mother also had other remarkable experiences as a child. About this inner life, she once wrote,
Between 11 and 13, a series of psychic and spiritual experiences revealed to me not only the existence of God, but man's possibility of uniting with Him, of realizing Him integrally in consciousness and action, of manifesting Him upon earth in a life divine. This, along with a practical discipline for its fulfillment, was given to me during my body's sleep by several teachers, some of whom I met afterwards on the physical plane.
With one of these teachers, she added, she had a special relation.
Later on, as the interior and exterior development proceeded, the spiritual and psychic relation with one of these beings became more and more clear and frequent. And although I knew little of the Indian philosophies and religions at that time, I was led to call him Krishna, and henceforth I was aware that it was with him, whom I knew I should meet on earth one day, that the divine work was to be done.
As we shall see, later in life, she did meet the teacher whom she called Krishna. During her sleep, Mother had many out-of-the-body experiences. One such experience went on night after night for almost a year.
When I was a child of about 13, for nearly a year, every night, as soon as I had gone to bed, it seemed to me that I went out of my body and rose straight up above the house, then above the city, very high above. Then I used to see myself clad in a magnificent golden robe, much longer than myself, and as I rose higher, the robe would stretch, spreading out in a circle around me, to form a kind of immense roof over the city. Then I would see men, women, children, old men, the sick, the unfortunate, coming out from every side. They would gather under the outspread robe, begging for help, telling of their miseries, their sufferings, their hardships. In reply, the robe, supple and alive, would extend towards each one of them individually, and as soon as they had touched it, they were comforted or healed, and went back into their bodies happier and stronger than they had come out of them. Nothing seemed more beautiful to me. Nothing could make me happier, and all the activities of the day seemed dull and colourless and without any real life, beside this activity of the night, which was the true life for me.
Along with her inner activities, Mother pursued her outer development. Among the arts, her favorite activities were music and painting. As we have mentioned, she began to draw at the age of 8. By the age of 10, she was doing portraits, and by 12, she was doing oil paintings. When she finished her school examinations at the age of 15, Mother decided to join an art studio and become a better artist. She chose the Académie Julian, the only prominent studio at the time to admit women. For 4 years, she attended the studio and became an accomplished artist. 6 of her works were exhibited at the Paris Salon, the most famous art salon in France. Meanwhile, her spiritual life deepened. She had no one to guide her, no books to help her. Yet, gradually, she began to live in the divine presence. As she once told the children at the playground during a Wednesday class,
between the age of 18 and 20, I had attained a conscious and constant union with the divine presence. And I had done it all alone, with absolutely nobody to help me, not even books, you understand? When I found one, I had in my hands a little later Vivekananda's Raja Yoga. It seemed to me such a wonderful thing, you see, that someone could explain something to me. This made me gain in a few months what would have perhaps taken me years to do. I was perhaps 21 then, either 20 or 21. I met a man who was an Indian, who came from here and spoke to me about the Gita. There was a translation, and he advised me to read it, and he gave me the key, his key. He said, read the Gita and take Krishna as the symbol of the immanent God, the inner Godhead. This was all that he told me. He said to me, read it with that, the knowledge that Krishna represents the immanent God in the Gita, the God who is within you. Well, in 1 month, the whole work was done. The first time I knew that there was a discovery to make within me, well, that was the most important thing. This had to be put before everything. And when I found, as I said, a book, a man, just to give me a little indication, to tell me, here you are, if you do this, the path will open before you. Why, I rushed headlong like a cyclone, and nothing could have stopped me.
Around 1903, when she was 25, Mother had several visions of a man in Indian dress. Later, she found that the man in her visions was Sri Aurobindo. About these visions, she said,
I saw Sri Aurobindo just as he looked physically, but glorified. That is, the same man I would see on my first visit, almost thin, with that golden bronze hue and rather sharp profile, an unruly beard and long hair, dressed in a dhoti with one end of it thrown over his shoulder, arms and chest bare, and bare feet. At the time, I thought it was vision attire. I mean, I really knew nothing about India. I had never seen Indians dressed in the Indian way. Well, I saw him, and in these visions, I did something I had never done physically. I prostrated before him in the Hindu manner. all this without any comprehension in the little brain. I mean, I really didn't know what I was doing or how I was doing it. Nothing at all. I did it. And at the same time, the outer being was asking, "What is all this?" I wrote the vision down, but I never spoke of it to anyone. But my impression was that it was premonitory, that one day something like it would happen. And it remained in the background of the consciousness, not active, but constantly present.
In the autumn of 1905, the mother met an adept in occultism, Max Théon, who had come to Paris. Théon invited her to visit his estate in Tlemcen, Algeria, to learn occultism. She went to Tlemcen in 1906 and again in 1907, each time for 3 months, and practiced occultism under the guidance of Théon and his wife. Then followed a 12-year period during which the mother concentrated on her mental development. In 1910, mother saw a photograph of Sri Aurobindo, an early photograph from his political days. She later recounted,
It was one of those early photos with nothing in it. It was empty, the remnants of the political man, not at all resembling what I had seen in vision. I didn't recognize him. It's strange, I said to myself. That's not it. For I saw only his external appearance. There was no inner contact. But still, I was curious to meet him. At any rate, I can't say that when I saw this photograph, I felt, he's the one. Not at all. He impressed me as being a very interesting man, but no more.
Between 1911 and 1914, mother had a whole series of inner experiences, which she said prepared her for meeting Sri Aurobindo. About one such experience, she said,
It is the experience I had in 1912. The first contact, when you go within, and then that's it. That concrete reality, that intensity beyond any possible physical intensity. And then the sense of, that's it, the divine. This is the divine. This is the divine reality. This is it, the divine. You are the divine. To have it, just to give you an idea, took me a year of exclusive concentration on finding that within myself. That is, to enter into contact with the immanent God. I did nothing but that, thought of nothing but that, wanted nothing but that.
At that time, mother was living in her house in Rue du Val-de-Grâce in Paris.
It was New Year's Eve, and I decided within the coming year. I had a large, almost square studio, a bit bigger than this room, with a door leading on a patio. I opened the little door and looked at the sky, and there, just as I looked, was a shooting star. You know the tradition. If you formulate an aspiration just as you see a shooting star, before the star disappears, it will be realized within the year. And there, just as I opened the door, was a shooting star. I was totally in my aspiration, union with the inner divine. And before the end of December of the following year, I had the experience. But I was entirely concentrated on that. I was thinking of nothing but that. Concentrating, like sitting in front of a closed door. And it was painful.
Mother makes an intense gesture to the chest.
Physically painful from the pressure. And then suddenly, for no apparent reason, I was neither more concentrated nor anything else. Poof! It opened. And with that, it didn't just last for hours. It lasted for months, mon petit. It didn't leave me. That light, that dazzling light, that light and immensity, and the sense of that willing, that knowing, that ruling the whole life, that guiding everything. Since then, this sense has never left me for a minute. And always, whenever I had a decision to make, I would simply stop for a second and receive the indication from there.
She also had the experience of the rising of Kundalini force.
I was still in Paris. It was before I came to India. I had read Vivekananda's books about it. And when the force rose, it emerged from the head through here.
Mother makes a gesture to indicate the top of the head.
The experience was never described in that way. The force came out and the consciousness settled here.
Mother makes a gesture to indicate a space about 8 inches above the head.
So when I came here, I told Sri Aurobindo about it. He told me it had been the same thing with him, and that according to the teaching of the texts, you cannot live when that takes place. You die. So,
Mother laughs.
he told me, here are two who have not died. The consciousness has remained there.
Mother makes the same gesture, indicating the place above the head.
It didn't come down again. It's there. It's always there.
In the spring of 1914, Mother travelled to Pondicherry by a Japanese ship, the Kagamaru. She arrived in Colombo on the 27th of March. From there, she crossed the straits at Talaimannar. Then, she took the train to Pondicherry and arrived in the morning of the 29th of March. Sri Aurobindo was living at the time in 2 corner rooms on the first floor of our guest house at the playground. The mother saw him in the afternoon. As she later said,
I came here, but something in me wanted to meet Sri Aurobindo all alone the first time. I had an appointment for the afternoon. He was living in the house that's now part of the second dormitory, the old guest house. I climbed up the stairway. and he was standing there, waiting for me at the top of the stairs. Exactly my vision. Dressed the same way, in the same position, in profile, his head held high. He turned his head towards me, and I saw in his eyes that it was he. The two things clicked. The inner experience immediately became one with the outer experience, and there was a fusion, the decisive shock.
At last, the mother had met Krishna, the one who she knew she would meet someday in the body, the one before whom she had prostrated in her visions years ago. The next day, she wrote in her diary about their meeting.
It matters little that there are thousands of beings plunged in the densest ignorance. He whom we saw yesterday is on earth. His presence is enough to prove that a day will come when darkness shall be transformed into light, and thy reign shall be indeed established upon earth. O Lord, divine builder of this marvel, my heart overflows with joy and gratitude when I think of it, and my hope has no bounds. My adoration is beyond all words. My reverence is silent.
Much later, she spoke about a profound experience she had the next day.
He saw me the next day for half an hour. I sat down. It was on the veranda of the guest house. I was sitting there on the veranda. There was a table in front of him. I was seated at his feet, very small, with the table just in front of me. It came to my forehead, which gave me a little protection. I didn't say anything. I didn't think anything, try anything, want anything. I merely sat near him. When I stood up half an hour later, he had put silence in my head. That's all, without my even having asked him, perhaps even without his trying. Oh, I had tried, for years I had tried to catch silence in my head. I never succeeded. I could detach myself from it, but it would keep on turning. But at that moment, all the mental constructions, all the mental speculative structure, none of it remained. A big hole, and such a peaceful, such a luminous hole. This lasted about half an hour. I quietly remained there. And then when I got up, I no longer knew anything. I no longer thought anything. I no longer had any mental construction. Everything was gone, absolutely gone, blank. As if I had just been born.
Sometime in April, or May of 1914, there was a proposal to launch a philosophical review, and Sri Aurobindo agreed. As he wrote afterwards, "As my theory was that a yogi ought to be able to turn his hand to anything, I could not very well refuse." On June 1st, the decision was taken to publish a monthly philosophical review in both English and French. It would be called Arya, and the first issue would come out on August 15th, Sri Aurobindo's 42nd birthday. For that issue, Sri Aurobindo wrote installments for 4 different books: The Life Divine, The Synthesis of Yoga, the Isha Upanishad, and The Secret of the Veda. Over the next 6.5 years, he wrote 64 pages a month. All of his major prose works first appeared in installments in the Arya journal. Later, he revised many of them for publication as books. The First World War broke out in August 1914. 6 months later, in February 1915, the mother departed for France. Separation from Sri Aurobindo was a painful experience for her. She wrote in her diary on board the Kamumaru,
"Solitude, a harsh, intense solitude, and always this strong impression of having been flung headlong into a hell of darkness. Never at any moment of my life, in any circumstances, have I felt myself living in surroundings so entirely opposite to all that I am conscious of as true, so contrary to all that is the essence of my life. For the moment, the clear-sightedness is lacking. Never was the future more veiled."
And the next day she wrote,
Each turn of the propeller upon the deep ocean seems to drag me farther away from my true destiny, the one best expressing the divine will. Each passing hour seems to plunge me again deeper into that past with which I had broken, sure of being called to new and vaster realizations.
For a year, during the early part of the First World War, she lived in Paris. Then, in March 1916, she sailed for Japan and landed 2 months later in Yokohama, the largest port in Japan. Mother lived in Japan for 4 years. The first year was in Tokyo with Dr. Shumei Okawa and his wife. Dr. Okawa was the founder of a sitting still school of meditation. Almost every evening, Mother sat with them for an hour of meditation. In the winter of 1917, she moved to Kyoto and soon became friends with Dr. Kobayashi and his wife Nebuko. With them too, she sat for meditation in the evening. She adapted herself to the Japanese life, dressed in a kimono, learned to speak and write the Japanese language, and even took a Japanese name, Fujiko, after the wisteria flower, Fuji in Japanese. The mother's name for this flower is Poet's Ecstasy. The mother was charmed by the beauty of Japan. Asked for her impressions of Japan, she wrote,
Japan is essentially the country of sensations. She lives through her eyes. Beauty rules over her as an uncontested master.
Again, she wrote,
The country is so wonderful, picturesque, many-sided, unexpected, charming, wild or sweet. It is in its appearance so much a synthesis of all the other countries of the world, from the tropical to the Arctic, that no artistic eye can remain indifferent to it.
Speaking to our school children, she said,
I had everything to learn in Japan. For 4 years, from an artistic point of view, I lived from wonder to wonder. Everything in this country, from beginning to end, gives you the impression of impermanence, of the unexpected, the exceptional. You always come to things you did not expect. You want to find them again, and they are lost. They have made something else which is equally charming. From the artistic point of view, the point of view of beauty, I don't think there is a country as beautiful as that.
About the people of Japan, she said,
They are not tormented by the idea of making themselves happy. It gives to the life of the whole country a very remarkable self-constraint, but no joyful and free expansion. It creates an atmosphere of tension and effort, of mental and nervous strain, not of spiritual peace, like that which can be felt in India, for instance. Indeed, nothing in Japan can be compared to the pure divine atmosphere which pervades India and makes of her such a unique and precious country.
During her stay in Japan, Mother met Rabindranath Tagore, who was on a lecture tour of the country. Tagore was so impressed with her that he asked her to take charge of Vishwabharati, his educational institution in Shantiniketan. But Mother politely declined because she knew that her destiny lay elsewhere. Many years later, she told a disciple that when she left Pondicherry, she left her soul with Aurobindo, and that he was always present with her in Japan. Towards the end of her 4-year stay, Mother had a powerful experience. She was sitting in meditation, but could not see what she should do next with her life. So she said to the Lord, "Now tell me, what must I do?" Later, she told the disciple,
The power was plainly there. Suddenly, everything in me became still. the whole external being was completely immobilized, and I had a vision of the Supreme, more beautiful than that of the Gita, a vision of the Supreme. And this vision literally gathered me into its arms. It turned towards the west, towards India, and offered me. And there at the other end, I saw Sri Aurobindo.
The next day, Mother started preparing to return to India. Sometime in April, she left Japan and travelled by ship to Colombo. Then she took a boat north along the Coromandel coast, and as she approached Pondicherry, Mother had an inner experience. She could feel Sri Aurobindo's presence, as she told us during an evening class in the playground.
I was on the boat at sea, not expecting anything. I was of course occupied with the inner life, but I was living physically on the boat. When all of a sudden, unexpectedly, about 10 nautical miles from Pondicherry, the quality of the atmosphere, of the air, changed so much that I knew I was entering the aura of Sri Aurobindo.
The boat reached Pondicherry on the 24th of April, 1920. When Mother went to see Sri Aurobindo, she met him in the guest house, the same house where she had first seen him in 1914. You will recall what she said about that first meeting, that when she saw Sri Aurobindo, she knew it was him, the exact vision of the one who had inwardly guided her for many years. And she added,
But this was merely the beginning of my vision. Only after a series of experiences, a 10 months sojourn in Pondicherry, 5 years of separation, then the return to Pondicherry, and the meeting in the same house, in the same way, did the end of the vision occur. I was standing just beside him. My head wasn't exactly on his shoulder, but where his shoulder was. I don't know how to explain it. Physically, there was hardly any contact. We were standing side by side like that, gazing out through the open window. And then, together, at exactly the same moment, we felt, now the realization will be accomplished. That the seal was set and the realization would be accomplished. I felt the thing descending massively within me, with the same certainty I had felt in my vision. From that moment on, there was nothing to say. No words. Nothing. We knew it was that.
And that is the significance of the event we are celebrating today. It was the return of Mother to Sri Aurobindo. It was the seal set on the accomplishment of their work together. And it was, as she once wrote, tangible sign of the sure victory over the adverse forces. On her 90th birthday in 1968, she explained her life and work in a simple way.
I came to India to meet Aurobindo. I remained in India to live with Aurobindo. When he left his body, I continued to live here in order to do his work, which is by serving the truth and enlightening mankind to hasten the rule of the divine's love upon earth.